So what is going on, guys? I am BlackOpsAmazing. Welcome back to another zombies video on the channel, where today we are talking about something interesting in Blood of the Dead. Something specifically to do with Richtofen, not the Primis version, but the alternate one, and how he could have caused the cycle to mess up. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, a like rating would be appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest zombies content on this channel. Leave any theories and ideas on how this map could end in the comment section below. I'd be interested to hear them. And without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go. So this was actually pointed out to me by a couple of different people in the comment section of some of my previous videos. I didn't notice this for myself, but if you go to the Blood of the Dead trailer, we know in that we have two different Richtofens. We have the Primis Richtofen that has arrived from Zetsubo. He has come to the lab with Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey to collect the blood vials. He already has his blood vials on him, as he was given them back in Origins, but he's come to Alcatraz to collect the Victus blood for Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey. And we can see in the trailer, he has his blood vials on him, as he should do. But then of course we also have the other Richtofen. This is the one that has been behind all of this. He gave Primis Richtofen the blood back in Origins. This is the Richtofen that has been manipulating the transit crew. He has been working with undead Richtofen and doing other things like that. If you are interested on the backstory of this map, I've already done a full video on it explaining everything, so definitely check that out. I will link it down in the description. But as it's being pointed out to me, you will notice that this Richtofen doesn't have blood vials. Now you may be thinking, Eli, okay, why is this a problem? Why would this version of Richtofen have blood vials? The other Richtofen has them, the Primis version, so why would this alternate version of him have blood vials as well? Well, we already know that something has gone wrong in this intro. We know what should have happened is that the Primis crew come here, they collect the blood, and then they go straight back to Zetsubo with no problems. As we've seen from this intro, something's gone wrong because first off, the Primis crew end up arriving here late. And then secondly, Richtofen reads the Canorium again, and the pages in here have changed. The information about his past, present and future tells Richtofen something different. And as we see, he then gets trapped in Alcatraz. So we already know that something's gone wrong in this intro. Something's caused the Canorium to change. But as I was saying, what you may not have noticed is actually the Richtofen in the intro doesn't have blood vials on him. And this is weird because if we go to the comics, the Richtofen in there does have blood vials. Both versions of Richtofens, the Primis and this alternate version, have blood vials on them. Whereas we go to the cutscene and only one of them does. Only the Primis version has the blood vials. The alternate version doesn't. So again, that's just another thing to add to our list of the many things that seems to have changed in this cutscene. So we now have the Primis crew having arrived late to pick up the blood. We also now notice that the alternate version of Richtofen doesn't have blood vials on him, whereas he should have. In the comics he did. And also the pages in the Canorium have now changed. Primis Richtofen says, our blood, mine blood. So clearly something is wrong with the blood vials. It may have something to do with alternate Richtofen since he doesn't have his. And as we see, they then get trapped in Mob of the Dead by Brutus. This cutscene is just becoming more and more confusing as time goes on, and we notice more and more things. We now have a new question as to why alternate Richtofen doesn't have blood vials. What's happened? And I think this could link into something that Mr. Darlik JD made a video on yesterday. I noticed that in that video, if you also look at the alternate Richtofen, besides from the blood vials, there are other things that are different about him as well. And this is the blood on his hands. If you look at Primis Richtofen, he has blood all over his hands, his arms, his clothing. Whereas if you look at the alternate Richtofen, you can clearly tell from this trailer, there is no blood on his hands, there is no blood on his arm, there is a bit of blood splatters on his clothing, but there's definitely less than the Primis Richtofen. So again, that is another big change. If there are all these differences to alternate Richtofen to what there was that we saw of him in the comics, then that begs the question, is this the same version of Richtofen that we saw in the comics? I was thinking, what if this is a different version of Richtofen? Maybe this isn't the right Richtofen. This alternate Richtofen that we see in the Blood of the Dead trailer, he also, in my opinion, acts a little bit strange as well. Not only doesn't he have the blood vials, not only doesn't he have blood on his arms and hands, but also when he's explaining to Primis Richtofen about what he needs to do with the Victus blood, well, he doesn't really explain it properly. It's almost like maybe he doesn't quite know. And also he then starts rambling on about Maxis, the summoning key, the vessel. Richtofen seems to be confused, whereas he shouldn't be. In the comics, this didn't happen to Richtofen, so why in the intro is it? It just makes you question even more, is this the actual Richtofen that we saw in the comics, or is this a different version? And if that's the case, well, what happened to the original Richtofen that we saw in the comics? Has this different version of him killed him? Has he gone missing somewhere? If this is a different version of Richtofen, which it looks like it could be, then what's happened to the other version? Has this one done something to him? Or is he helping him out? There's so many Richtofens in our storyline, I know it can get confusing. I also think it's kind of weird how, after he gives Primis Richtofen the Conorium, he tells him to read it. He then walks away as if he doesn't care. Primis Richtofen says, "You possibly can't expect me to let this happen," and the other Richtofen just puts his hands up, basically shrugs his shoulders, he smirks, and then walks out through the rift. All of these things are quite suspicious. They're making me think that maybe this isn't the right Richtofen that Primis Richtofen should have been meeting. And there are all these things that are pointing towards him not being the right version. I mean, if this is the same Richtofen, then there's still the question as to why he doesn't have blood vials on him. What has he done with them? Or what has he not done with them? Could this be like an evil version of the younger Richtofen? Really, I don't know. We have theories as to what's going on, but we really know nothing more than what we've seen in the trailer about this Blood of the Dead cutscene, and that's why it's so interesting. Originally, I thought that the reason things have messed up in Blood of the Dead is because the Primis crew were late, which gave Richtofen more time to read the Conorium, meaning that the pages had changed. We don't know why the Primis crew was late to here, but they were. But now seeing this, I'm thinking that maybe it is actually the other version of Richtofen that is behind this. Maybe he has messed things up. Or actually, you say that, what if this isn't the right Richtofen? This is another version of him, and he's done something to the original version that we were supposed to get. I know it's so goddamn confusing. I'm trying my best to explain things, but I do definitely think something strange is going on here. We don't know what just yet. And yes, for all of the people asking, I've seen so many comments in videos. A load of people are still wondering if this is Misty in the freezer. The answer is yes. We found out in the comics that the transit crew are in these chambers under Alcatraz, frozen. So this is Misty, and the other characters are here as well, just to clear that up. But this opens up a whole new path in our zombie storyline. We have the Ether storyline, we then have our new Chaos storyline, but it's almost like this one changes the tides, and it's like Treyarch are creating a whole brand new story, and that's exactly what they've said they're doing. I don't quite know how it's going to work in DLCs, if they're carrying on with both the old storyline and the new Chaos storyline as well. Does that mean we're going to get 2 zombies maps per DLC? That could be a possibility. I'm not exactly sure on that though, but as to where our old storyline is going now, I honestly have no idea. I mean, clearly this isn't part of the cycle. Our whole zombie storyline is one giant cycle where we go map to map completing the Easter egg, we go from Nact to Revelations, and then when we do everything, we just repeat the same events over and over again. And if the characters do end up dying or doing something wrong, it was Monty that sent us back to the beginning until we did that Easter egg correctly, and then when we finished everything, we just did it over and over again. We are stuck in this infinite cycle. Just like the Mob of the Dead characters were trapped in a cycle, that was until they broke it. Like the Shangri-La characters, Brock and Gary were also trapped in a cycle. Our characters in our Ether story are trapped in a cycle as well. And what should have happened was that they came to Alcatraz, collected the blood vials, and then left. It literally took 20 seconds. But as we see in this intro, something in the cycle has gone wrong. It has something to do with the blood vials, meaning Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai, and Dempsey are now trapped here. It seems like the cycle may be broken, or if not, something's definitely gone wrong. Possibly just like the Mob of the Dead crew, Finn, Al, Sal, and Billy, how they were trapped in a cycle in Mob of the Dead, and they had to break it to escape. Well, maybe because of this, our Primis crew are now trapped in a cycle in Alcatraz, and we have to break it to escape as well. Maybe in Blood of the Dead, we end up breaking the giant cycle that we have been stuck in for eternity, and after doing that, we can then go on our own ways to stop Dr. Monty, the god who we think has put us in this cycle in the first place. Again, that's just another crazy theory that you can put out there, although I kind of hope that happens. Anyway guys, that is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating on the video. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest zombies content on the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you all for 450,000 subscribers, and until next time, goodbye.